Dum 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 dum. Remember on the line? Dum 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 dum. Don't forget the other line. Rhythm is a powerful thing because rhythm is the thing that makes people like move or groove or walk. You know, I'm not one of the best. I'm not the best player. You know, and then being brave enough to do what you can, more than you can. You're falling into something, you're spilling into something, you know, and it's about to come out, right?
Hello viewers, welcome. Thank you for joining us on another episode of Unmute by Verse 1. I am Olawe, and today we have a special guest in the house. Is a man I've been looking forward to chatting with today. There's so much energy and insight as well. So welcome, Kamau.
Hello, how are you? Yeah. Hello.
So I think I'm going to start with a name. You know, it's a name. Just tell me, you've told me off camera the different influences or the different origins of a name, and I think for the pleasure of the viewers.
Sure. I think the name. It comes from many reports from travels. I think it's Ghanaian, Cambodian, Japanese, something else, Hawaiian. Yeah. Lotus, Astonishing, Silent Warrior, and Fist is what I've gotten so far.
Each of those things are actually apt in some way in describing you. A Silent Warrior. You've got Fist, and we're in Asia, where the lotus is beloved plant.
There you go.
So, in your music, do you also draw on eclectic sources, inspiration-wise, instrument-wise?
Yeah. You know what? I've always listened to everything, right? So, I've always listened to. From Iggy Pop to Stravinsky to Bob Dylan, I'm a super fan, to Lou Reed and John Cale, to like songwriters, Ryan Adams, you know, Michael Penn. But I'm also been really interested in sound, you know, this idea of like what sound can do. And I'll give you an example of one morning I heard what sounded like was a UFO. It sounded like that. And I'm like, what is this? Where is this coming from? And it was this guy, this pigeon trainer. He was on the roof with his pigeons and he was sending his birds out like this, you know, when they would fly around and like, for some reason, 150 pigeons sounds like together when their wings go together, right? They're doing something with the wind, and I pick up on things like that. I think about I can use that sound. That's what I thought. Actually, I wanted them to I missed my chance to go down and say, "Can you just run those birds again?" Because I want to get that sound and incorporate that somehow. I get stuff from everywhere. It's everywhere.
So I want to stay on that for a second. So you hear that sound. Does it keep ringing in your head the whole day, and it torments you until you put it into music?
Because there's music under it, right? When I think of a song, and I gotta really have it in my head, I have the whole thing, you know. I can sing it to myself. I got it all boxed out, you know, not tight. Things change, of course, when you're in the studio, but that essential skeletal frame is there, right? So if it was a song that incorporated a sound, that song would have been a layer already, or a coming layer, you know, where I'll be sitting there and I'll think, oh wait, you know what I need that sound of the pigeons flying around, you know, that ambiance of like something arriving at the beginning of a track or something exiting at the end of a track, you know. So I just think of it as there's music under it all. It's all connected, you know. You just have to find the music.
You know, it's interesting you say that because on one of your tracks, I actually like the song "The Ghosts." Of, the opening sequence had you. It was like a beatbox, and the beautiful thing about that was you start with a mouth, make a sound, and like 2 or 3 seconds later, the bass comes in.
Yeah.
Perfectly matching what you have been doing with a beatbox. Yeah. So when I heard that, I said to myself, I think this is a window into this man's creative process. And now that you've just described how you get inspiration, I kind of feel quite happy with myself that that I figured that out. And it's going to make me ask or lead me to my... I love asking this question, by the way, to all musicians. For you, which comes first? The lyrics or the music?
It depends on the song. It depends on the project. Sometimes I have a line in my head that's and I got the line. I don't know how it's going to work out, but I've got the line, right? And I can hear it musically to myself what the line sounds like, and I can sing to myself. But there's not a song around it yet. Sometimes there's that. I've got the riff. I've got the music, right? And I've got the progression, right? But I don't know what I'm going to do with it yet. I know there's something cooking in there. I know there's something under it. I know there's something to nurture, right? I think that so it's different, and I just go with whatever the calling is for that particular song. Either way, it's going to be a ton of stuff built around it. Either way, it's going to be arranged. But I think there's an initial riff that is true, be it the music or the line that starts the process.
So the Ghost, for instance, how did that play out, creating that song?
That one started out with it came from two directions actually. There was the one where it says, "And Mama, tell me the story of your ghost."
Yes.
Which it's a lot to that, but that was a line that was in my head for a while. Variations of that line. And then when I first started trying to put a riff to it, because I said, what does it feel like? And I once you get past all the things it doesn't feel like, that's kind of counterproductive sometimes. It's and then you find the dum dum da da dum 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 dum, which is like that downward progression, of like, you're falling into something, you're spilling into something, and it's about to come out, right? And then I started writing the lyrics, And Mama, tell me the story of your ghosts, the ones that keep me up, the ones that haunt me most. And I just...
Sometimes I wonder where The thing with that song, you actually say, sometimes I wonder where I've been.
Yeah.
But the first time I heard it, what I heard was, sometimes I wonder where I'll be. So by the end of the song, I'm like, does this point to, or does this suggest where my priorities lie or the focus? Am I wondering about the future or reminiscing about the past? So I want to throw that question to you. Are you, or do you have your eyes ahead, or do you think back and say, I've had such a great life. This has been nice, or maybe this could have been better.
Probably there's no time. So let's see.
I'll take what I'll.
No, I'm saying, So if you go through probably there's no time, then it's the idea of like it's both at one time, what I mean? It's just a sense of that particular Monk of Trust was about just throwing yourself deep in. Right, just deep in and reflecting. It wasn't a rock out thing. It wasn't a deliver it to someone album. It was like take each of those thoughts and just deep dive. Jump in the pool. You know what I mean? So there is a sense of like, how do I get here? To steal from the Talking Heads real quick, and yeah, what now that you're here, what do you do with it? Because the past is the past, you know what I mean? And but where do you go from here? So I think there's both in that song, I need, like I said, I need all of the three ghosts, one a sense of danger, one sense of host, you know what I mean? You need them all.
Interesting. Thanks for sharing that. Now, your music has been described as lush and carefully woven narrative of music. What do you make of that description?
Texture. It's not about one sound. It's not about, for me, and I don't like to think about knots all the time, but I'm not the guy who just sits up there and sits with me on a mic and a guitar. I have much respect to people who can do it. Ryan Adams, brilliance, Bob Dylan, come on. You know what I mean? Joan Baez, Joni Mitchell. The list is long. Right? But I just, for me, it's always about layers. And if it's not the band layers, like how you layer the basic 4 instruments, the bass guitar, lead guitar, drums, it's about, even on an acoustic guitar, it's about how you can layer sort of the that ring, that resonance of the guitar, that natural ring acoustic guitar has, with the resonance of the vocal. But wait, go further, right? What's coming out? What's coming out of that extra? Where's the oboe? Where's the violin? Where's the I don't know. Where's the backing? The second vocal? Where's just the sound? There's this almost like even noise is a sound, right? So even if you're not singing in the mic, and you're not playing guitar in the mic, you still got that kind of white noise in there, right? What about that? What's that doing? And there's always about textures, right? Texture to feel, to emotion, to what remains, what stays with people. Like, for me, like, the greatest songs that songwriters I love so much are the songs that make me a little sad. They don't make me sad because they're intentionally writing sad lyrics, to make me cry. They're writing these arrangements that are really touching. They touch you in like this sonic way, and you can't help but respond to it. I'm sorry, I know I'm mentioning a whole lot of other artists, but we're all in this game together, right? Matthew Sweet, I almost forgot, on piano, not on guitar, is one of the most sadly beautiful songs ever.
I think that's something that connects us as human beings.
Yeah.
It's sometimes, like you said earlier, happiness disappears, and you might not feel or enjoy another person's happiness. But when there's sorrow, there's something, it stops you. You just get to see it. And would you say, as a musician, that it's more natural to tap into that emotional state when writing songs than other? Because I don't have the status, but I would hazard a guess and say it's more. There are more sad songs than happy songs.
Happy songs in major keys. Yeah, there's not a lot of those. There are some of those. There's some of those out there. It's weird. If you think about all the songs in the world where you take out love and loss, how many songs do you have left? I test myself with this all the time.
And even the love songs. The love songs are usually about lost love, or there's a lot of sadness.
Longing, desire, heartbreak, sadness, anguish, regret. And it's not that I think songwriters, we try to write these to live in darkness, but you tell a story, right? And in every story, there's a victory, and there's a knowledge, and there's a learning, but there's a way you learned it. And unfortunately, I can't think of like a lot of long lasting lessons you learn from just completely being 100% over the top happy. I try to think of one now. I'm really trying to think of, there's some out there, I'm pretty sure. But that's not the greater percentage of songs, I think.
There ain't a lot of happy songs in major keys. And because it's something that I ponder every now and then. Like this, when you hear a sad song, a proper sad song, I think a lot of artists get to really showcase or just reveal their talents, their vocal dexterity, or even musical instrumentation when the songs are of that persuasion. And I've never understood why. I was hoping. I'm still finding out why, and whenever I do, I'll get back to you. I'll get back to you with that. I want to know, when was it that you realized, you know what? I think I'm actually quite good at this music thing.
I don't say that to myself. I say, I'm sorry. I say, I just work it. I just work. You know, if it's recording this Monk Choss, or I just work it until I get the idea as fully realized as I can on the deck. You know, and there's a lot of people who can play. You know, I'm not one of the best. I'm not the best player. You know. But it's like it's about just rendering the idea, rendering it. You know what I mean? And it being brave enough to do it what you can, more than you can. You know, Monk Trust wasn't a massive ensemble. You know, it was me sitting there saying, you know, the sounds, the acoustic guitar, the vocals, bass. Let me figure out the bass line so I can at least, if I, you know, explain to people how to do it, and maybe just lay it down, you know, or like rhythm, you know, percussion, you know. So it's like I don't think that's about this idea of like trying to proclaim myself as the goodest, you know. It's just bringing the song to life, you know, just bringing it there.
So the very first song you wrote, how old were you when you wrote the very first song? Or what were you doing?
Like high school. Yeah.
I want take me back with you on that journey and tell me, I was sitting down here. I bought the pen from that store. I want to know.
I think about that.
What inspired?
That's interesting. I'm flipping back through the
I could figuratively see the pages.
Oh man. You know what it was? I think so. Way back in the high school, senior of high school, right? And a great friend, my friend Terrence, my friend Mark. We were, you know, and who was on drums? I forget. Mark was drums. Terrence was guitar. Who was bass? Mark was bass. I forget who was on drums. And so it was that year. I was playing in this like electric band. I wasn't really amazingly good. We were playing like punkish stuff, covers, and then I was my first guitar teacher, Marshall. He was teaching me acoustic guitar blues, and I was learning. Dare I say, Country Roads by John Denver. Anyway, so and you know, you're going through these, and I'm like, wait a minute. You know, like, and then I was off to college, right? I think that's when I first started writing, and I just didn't want to do cover band. You know, that wasn't the mode, and so I just started trying to sit down, working out stuff. And again, I wasn't the greatest player. I was an acoustic guitar, and it wasn't a great guitar, by the way. My next future electric was better. But I started working out songs, and I don't. Some of them I still remember. Some were just angsty, in their way, you know. But it was the birthing ground of like seeing people's reactions to the songs, the original stuff, you know, and from there writing more, and then like I said, half of those songs I don't remember anymore. There's a EP on tape out there somewhere with with a live show on it. If you know, if I find it, if someone finds it one day, you know, hey. Congratulations, but is
there any reward for finding it?
But
$10,000.
But that was the beginning, I think, the college years, and like it was funny writing the acoustic-y stuff, and then I was doing it back then too, writing the acoustic-y stuff, and then writing the electric-y stuff, which they felt totally different, totally different.
I'll hold that thought. And ask, how many instruments do you play?
Oh, one guitar. I mean, I can plunk along on piano to get a real basic melody line, but I'm by no means a piano player, and I don't do it in public, and I don't tell people I can play it. It's just me in the room plunking out like a melody, which I then transition to guitar, and then we go from there.
So the guitar is a natural habitat, right?
I could shake some eggs. I can hit some rhythm sticks. I can, do some cowbell. I can tambo it up. On some kazoo. I could do that.
I think I can do that as well. And when people ask me, "Do you play an instrument?" I usually say, "Well, it depends." I can play the maracas. I think I probably can hold my own anywhere in the world when it comes to the maracas. But the guitar, any of those, that's not my
foot tambourine.
Tambourine. I could try with that. Now, for you, what's the reward? What do you enjoy? The reward is the creative process, writing the song, putting it together, or performing it. Like everything's been done, you've layered it as much as the very first thing. Which of these two experiences gives you the best experience, like the most blissful?
Wow. They're different. They're very different. Because the recording is about you sit in the studio and you're at the board and you can really do anything, right? It's the limit is you, right? And just the creation, the process of that, the creative. Because even in the electric band scenario, you're still creating tone. You're still creating a sort of a feel, right? A story. And so that's powerful. Like you're creating your voice, right? This is what you're putting on there. What you're recording is your face, right? This is how I think musically. That's what you're telling people when you put it out there. So I think that's a really to be cherished, right? To sit there and craft your voice on the deck. But then performing is a different kind of energy too, because performing is a sort of, it's like that exhilaration of like, hey ma, I did it, you know what I mean? And
I think you get an instant reaction from the audience, right?
Yeah.
Or when you're performing, because I've heard both sides. Some people say when they perform, they leave for the audience, and for some, when they're on stage, they're just in a different world. They don't even see or hear what's going on in the room. They're just in that moment, completely buried in the art.
Yeah.
Which of those, or where do you stand?
It's a conversation you're having with the audience, right? I would say if they're not having fun, we're not having fun, right? It's a conversation with the audience. You're giving out energy. They receive energy, they feel it, they give you back energy, and then you just keep a cycle of like, this going on, and then you're talking, right? You're hey, how are you guys doing? Hey, thanks for coming out tonight. And that's part of people like you just filling up space with. That's part of the show. You're connecting, with each other's energies, and that's what makes a show. That's what makes the experience. So by the time you get to the end and you feel swelled up and you're in like 100%, it's really much better if the audience is 100% too, right? Because we've had this experience together. That's the thing. Even on the songwriting side, when you get you write those songs, you say you're creating emotion. You're saying you're sitting there and you're it's not me as a songwriter sitting there saying, listen to this beautiful song I'm playing it 3 minutes, I'm done, now everyone clap please. That, in fact, if you don't like it, don't clap, because then I understand where we are in the show and what I need to do to make you, to help give you a more enjoyable experience, So it's a conversation. I know it works when you finish the show and people are talking to you about, it's not just a, hey, that was great, see you next time. Is they want to talk to you about what they've heard. They want to talk to you about the story. They want to ask you questions. They say, what was that song you sang where it was about blah, blah, blah. And you start to have this conversation, and then they start to tell you their musicians or the kind of stuff they listen to. And we're both expanding, right? We're both kind of growing and building in the experience, in the music, and where we go with it.
I can see how that will play out. And I think it speaks to why music is such a powerful tool, if we describe it as that. You can trigger several experiences concurrently and simultaneously. 4,000 people in the audience, one performer, one song, and 4,000 different interpretations and messages, different messages from the same song, the same arrangement.
Yeah. People laugh, people dance, people tear up, people pull someone to them. Hey, you got to share this with me. That's the show. It's never been me just standing on stage, saying, okay, we're done now. Now give us applause. That's never.
So do you feel a sense of responsibility, knowing that you've got the ability to evoke such emotions and responses from people? So when you're creating, when you're performing, is that something that remains or features in your consciousness? Is it at the back of your mind that I have a power here, kind of a power to get things? Does it ever happen like that?
I think of it as if your music didn't speak to people, you should write it better. No, I'm serious. I seriously say that is like, it's not power. It's the ability to be the conduit for a conversation, to be the conduit for a song people want to go back and listen to after and hear again, and listen to themselves again. It's to build this, I don't want to call it sensibility. The best songs for me have a presence in my life, and I hold them dear to my playlist because I can sing those songs to you note for note because I hold them to myself. You know what I mean? If it's a power, it's a kind of a sonic power that music has. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
But I don't think it's a wieldy power. I think of it as really, if your songs didn't reach people, you should think about maybe rearranging it, because that was a point, right? To reach out and speak to someone.
You play one instrument.
Yeah.
Well, there are people who make songs now who can't even play an instrument because it's the digitalization of music, and there's a school of thought that rejects that, or rejects a description of that process as music, or to call those people musicians, because how can you say you're not a musician if you don't play an instrument? Yet, going by what you've said, they pull these things together and they're able to touch people powerfully. Where do you stand? Are you of the view that to call yourself a musician, you must be able to handle an instrument?
I think you have to have a sense of musicianship. I do. I think you have to have a sense of what an instrument you pick, the one that's your specialty, can do, should be able to do. I don't think anybody has to be the maestro player of the world to call themselves a musician, because I think musicians, for me, is more about team than one anyway. I like sequencers, DJs, because they made their song using a virtual MIDI keyboard on their computer. Does that make them not musicians? Well, they knew enough to use the keyboard on the computer screen to make a song, right? To make something that sounds melodic. Yeah, and when they put the beat on, they knew enough to know how about flow and how that what feels like good flow and what feels like the computer's kicking off some weird thing, but sometimes people want the weird thing, by the way, that's why we have off beats and break beats, right? So I think that it's a tough thing to say in the 21st century that if you don't have an instrument in your house, you're not a musician. Because if you go to a sound deck, there's so many instruments in Logic, in Ableton, in these places. And so the question becomes, can you make melody? Can you make something sonically pleasing? Can you make something rhythmic? Can you make something that makes people want to get up and dance, wants to just walk off by themselves for a minute and just listen to the song by themselves because they don't want people around while they listen to it, Or can you make something that just makes people want to just blow their head off, rock out? Now, generally that takes instruments, but, if you could do it on your computer with a MIDI keyboard, knock yourself out, do it.
So, because I've heard very heated debate for and against this view. Of note was Avicii, and famously or notoriously didn't play any instrument, but at some point, he was like the most influential musician before his sad passing. But I saw an interview with Wyclef Jean, who is a multi-instrumentalist.
Yes.
He swore to Avicii's musical genius. Said, "Look, I've never seen any better musical mind." So I guess your point stands. It's the 21st century. Yeah. You must be able. Maybe you've just not had the chance to learn the instrument, but the ability to identify the elements of music, like you said, melody, rhythm. And that leads me to my second point. My question: which of these elements of music, you can find it of the rhythm, the melody, do you manipulate most in your own music? What do you play with? Do you enjoy playing with? What do you find most challenging?
It all comes together, but I think that rhythm is interesting to me. Rhythm, counter rhythm, time, off time. Intentional use of off time, because it really doesn't that underpin everything. Voice can be instrument if you use it rhythmically, right? You said maracas, right? But if you take like 2 cups over there, and there you go, right? You take that. You pitch it up, you give it some resonance, and over that you put a vocal line. Guess what? You got the first 2 stems of the song. Right? Now comes the bass. I'm hearing it in my head as you do it, right?
Please go on. I want to go with it.
Remember the other line? Don't forget the other line. Remember that? And then you get little, I don't know, and I'm just like riffing, by the way. This is not a real song. Riffing, by the way, and so it's that rhythm, like, so we're still on that underpinning rhythm, right?
Yeah.
And then you play with the rhythm, right? Maybe have a violinist come in and they want to lay down a straight violin line for you, and you tell them, can you do something for me? Okay, try. And now guess what? That's not. It's still in time, by the way, right?
Like I said, that's a 4. Is that a 4 over 4?
I don't know. My counting is terrible, but anyway, but it's like, but you remember like doom 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 doom, right? And now, and so it's like that. This rhythm is a powerful thing, because rhythm is a thing that makes people like move or groove or walk. Right? or you know ballads.
Or do the two-step.
Like, if you want to really test the theory, like, really next time you're out walking, like, count your walk. You know what I mean? And if you get self-conscious about it, try to make yourself walk in a different rhythm because you feel self-conscious about it. It's difficult. you know. So, like, I think rhythm is the underpinning of a lot of things. You know, time changes. So tricky. It's a fantastic thing.
So I'm enjoying this conversation because we've, like I said, we have the beginnings of a song. The rhythm is that.
You got the bass line, you got the drum.
How would you bring in melody and harmony into just as an illustration?
Yeah.
If we had that, how would you infuse that?
That's where your story comes into play. What are you singing about? Yeah, that's where your story comes into play. So now you got to think of what the story is, right? If you got that hook, what's your story? Why does that hook exist? What's your entry? What's your through line, right? And it's not just what's your first verse? What's your through line? What's it about? You know, it could be about so many things. I mean, it's the list of hundreds of things it could be about, right? So then you got to think, what are you going to sing about? What's that core emotion? I like to say when I think about poetry, right? What's that core emotion? Why are you singing? And in that, that's where you're going to find the sung melody line. Now, I don't have a good example of the one we're throwing out right now. I don't know. I just threw it out. No, but I'd have to think about it.
I'm learning how it works.
What's the story? Why don't I want to tell the story?
So, by the way, is this always how you go about creating your music, or this was just?
That was just if you start from rhythm, you hit a way, you can find your way at the song, right? But if you could start from a line, you know.
Could you give an example of if you were going to start from a line?
The story. And now the flower lady's left us under the shadow of a tree, and there will be no more roses, right? There will be no roses. But it wasn't sad. It wasn't meant to be. It's not a funeral dirge. Right, it's meant for nostalgic, you know, like you can't go back. So just understand what you had and enjoy it for what it was when it was. And now remember them well. Don't cry about them, sing about them, right? Blues. So you got that line. And now the flower lady's left us, right? The rhythm should not be so complicated. It shouldn't take away. If you're going to be about the story and tell the story, the rhythm should not take away from the story. It should add, you know? So, dun, 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 right? Dun, 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 dun. Ascension, give them something to hang their head on. Dun, 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 dun. Bring it back to the root. But that's not the actual home riff, you know? Dum, 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 3 notes.
That's like the standard chord progression. I think I know that.
You know? But look what you can do with 3 notes. Dum, dum, bum. You can embellish that, of course, which I always embellish a little bit. But and then you can add, and now the flower ladies left us under the shadow of a tree. And now you're telling the story. You know what I mean? So if you go to the wordsmith side of it, you have to know what's important, I think, in the song, right? If you want people to hear the story, want people to lock into that poetic, don't make the music so much that it takes
precedence over
it's balance. It's balance.
And you're a relatively accomplished songwriter.
Yeah.
Now, I want to know, when writing the music, because you just said from the wordsmith perspective or point of view, does it help you that you write a lot of your own songs and you have a facility with words when you're writing, or do you sometimes feel like it distracts from the music? Maybe you're trying to really play on some words or use some clever lines, and in that process you're spending too much time on the words rather than the music.
Well, no, it changes, right? Because you write the lyrics. If you start from the words and then you go to the music, then you're probably at some point have to start restructuring the words anyway, because you have to still fit the words into that music rhythm, right? You have the general word level, then you have the music level, but then they got to fit together. And there are moments where you have to go in there and cobble and shape the word, right, to keep the musical, the soundscape, the sound sense of it. And when it works well, it's harmonious when it's working well, right? It's not. I don't like to feel the words are fighting from the music, and I'm trying to fit all the words into the musical line. And neither do I want to try to fit all the musical line. And this musical line must be on top of those words. Sometimes you got to alter that. You gotta understand what I hate to say it. I know it sounds so blasé, but you got to know what the song wants. You got to know what the core feeling is. You got to know how to best serve the intention of the story, of the words, of the music. And there's a humility to it, because yes, it's yours, but it's not like you're writing it to be like, this is a song that it must come out this way. No, because sometimes if it's not working, you just stop working on that when you go to another song that you can figure out better, and you come back, right? But you really have to trust it's like when you're writing a story, or you're writing a play, the characters start to speak for themselves, and that's when I know I'm in the perfect moment of finishing a play quickly, because the characters are speaking. And I'm just sort of becoming like, okay, all right, this is what we're going to say. All right, scene. All right, but scene, okay. Act one, bam, and you're done. And you let that happen. I let that happen the same way in music that happens in drama, or in poetry, or in fiction, whatever I'm writing.
It's interesting. I love that analogy, because first you create the character, writing a play, for instance, and the next stage is the character has evolved and become its own, has its own voice. Yeah. Now, when you're writing, you're no longer thinking for the character, but now you're listening to what the character, and then, like you said, when you said you're now a conduit, so you become a conduit for the character, even though the character was your creation to begin with. That's a beautiful analogy. It just clarifies it. It clarifies it for me, because I was wondering, you're almost equal part songwriter and musician. Yeah. So I was wondering, like, do you have to take off one hat to be the other, or you can wear both hats at the same time and not look funny.
Those hats coexist. Because it's always that melt. It's always that merger. Those hats coexist. It merges with performer too. Because when you're performing it, I'm not that kind of lockstep performer where we have to have this change at this bar. Okay, we missed it. What's going on? It feels every show's a little different, right? Every performance is a little different. So you trust your instincts. I think you have to trust your instincts.
You're also speaking of instincts. Jazz is famous for being a lot of ad-libbing and just improvisation. And in one of the descriptions of your music, you had said, I think, chords from jazz, lyrics from soul,
crazy
or something
thing,
like that. And so tell me more about that. Is that...
I like it, tonal.
Is that a reflection of your personality? Like, let's just create. Let's start this journey and see where we'll end.
Well, it's funny. It's two things. One, I love atonal. I love this sort of like, that's the chord, but it's not exactly the chord. You know what I mean? I love that sound. But it's also because I remember when I used to be a little rough on my guitars and break more strings. And I remember like a moment famously when I was in New York, and so I broke one and I broke the second. And I was like, oh, gosh, now I got to play this chord a different way again. And then I broke a third. It was crazy. And then it get rough. And it's funny but the beautiful thing about it is you start to hear how to shape things differently. You know what I mean? And then you put all 6 strings back on. And you're like, oh, I didn't need that string. I could do it without that one. And if let me move some things around, and I'll do that when I'm in my house writing some things. I'll just try all these crazy different shapes and taking a finger off here and a finger off there, and it sounds like just, oh yeah, guitarists do that all the time. Yeah, I know they do. But I'm making myself like go through all these different variations of the excuse me, getting water of the sound just to see how it's gonna be,
I'd like to speak to you about your album, Moncas. Why did you choose that? The Moncatros.
Moncatros.
What's the origin? The origin story, if you will.
I'm not going to give the 2 words away. It's a state secret. But,
I can keep a secret.
But you think about like, try just thinking about words you can put together when you're trying to be creative about album titles and band names, and you're looking through the list of like names people already have, and you're like trying to sort it out. Try to think about words you can put together. It's a fun experiment, Like I don't know. I can't think of. It's funny when you try to think of it like on purpose. You can't think of it right, but I don't know. 2 things that seem non-related, and you stick them together like stone iguana. I don't know. Chocolate arpeggio. With this, and you start to stick things together. Moncatros came from an exercise like that.
So you haven't really given me anything. I'm living here not knowing more about Moncatros than when I came in.
Moncatros is 2 words. It's 2 actual words. You stick them together. It's like a monk and an albatross.
Okay. I'll stick with that. I'll just I'm satisfied. At least I've got the origins or the makings of the word. I feel it'll be remiss of me, since we've spoken about rhythm at length and using the voice or considering the voice as an instrument, that we don't say a word or 2 about rap. There are those who argue forcefully that I've seen several of them argue forcefully that, rap isn't really music.
Get me in trouble.
And so
You're getting me in trouble.
what would you say to that?
Getting me in trouble. No. I listen, I'm a fan. I've been a fan of Mos Def since I was a kid.
I love Mos Def.
I
love Mos Def.
Mobb Deep. It's such a funny Mobb Deep story. Can I tell the story?
By all means, yeah.
So it's funny. Like I said, listen to all kinds of music. So I don't. People are like, what's your favorite kind of music? I'm like, I listen to anything that's sounds musical, makes me react, right? And so I'm in Lithuania, and I'm on some writing kind of retreat thing, and I'm walking around seeing Lithuania. And this one night I was trying to see what the city's like, which is fascinating. Vilnius is fascinating.
Vilnius?
Vilnius, yeah, it's fascinating. And I don't know why I ended up in one store, just because, I like finding weird stuff. And it was one store like famous for breaking up hard sugar candy and putting it in ice cream, and it was like some fantastic concoction. And I'm coming out of the store and blah blah. And I'm just like, hey, what's up? And like, let's see what happens. Let's see what happens. And we end up talking about Mobb Deep, and I was like, you don't know Mobb Deep? And he's like, oh yeah, I do know Mobb Deep. I'm like, really? It's like, really? This guy breaks down. Something like, scared to die, scared to look, ain't no such thing as halfway crooks. And I was like, okay. Okay, alrighty then. And I ended up making it with this guy. He was with a girlfriend. And he showed me like Villainous for the rest of the night. It was so cool, you know what I mean? And that was crazy. It really travels, man. It really travels.
So, I mean, from because I do have a Lithuanian friend. So I was waiting somehow, or hoping at the back of my mind that you would say, "Oh, the guy's name is Vytautas."
No, I don't know what his name was
because he was a friend of mine. I met several years back. But from your response, I take it that you consider rap as a bona fide genre of music.
Of course. That's it for. Like, people like codify like what should be music, what should be sound, what should be good. Good is what makes you feel. Good is what makes you respond. Good is what gives you a line and you just think that is the most fantastic thing I've heard, and I need to write that down right now because that's a lesson.
So speaking of faraway cities, faraway for an American like yourself, you've been in Beijing for several years, almost a decade, in fact. So how much of Beijing or China makes its way into your music, either through the lyrics or the rhythms or the melodies?
Maybe experiences. I don't know if I can think of them as like New York songs or Beijing songs, or it's more like the songs are experiences, and I'm not saying they're autobiographical. That's not what I'm saying. I'm saying that the way I can tell you where I've created, which songs I've created in which cities, and I can tell you which cities inspired the making of that particular moment in my mind, or emotional content moment, or qualitatively emotional rendering moment. But I don't think I've written a Beijing song or a New York song, or a city song just yet. I don't know.
So, but do you find, like, for instance, you're going through Songwriter or the Hutongs, and you start to see things that grab your attention and go into that repository where you return to every now and then to get inspirations. I want to know some of those things that make their way into that repository as well.
I hear it, but see, that also comes from a writer sense of story. Like, I hear, it's not that I eavesdrop, it's not, it might sound creepy. It's like, I hear, there's bits of conversation you hear that you just, okay, hold on to that line. Or there's bits of a riff, and I don't take riffs by any means, but like, you hear, you go to a show and you hear somebody play something, or you're in a store and you hear some over the sound speaker there, like some music playing, and I'm not the guy who takes out a phone and records. No, but I kind of mark in my head the kind of the tonal spirit of that thing, and then I'll go it's not all the time, but I'll write in a little notebook, and then at some point I'll have a collection of this like stack of paper notes, and I'm just like, okay, and I'll start like, hodgepodging, like, oh, wait, there's a musical line and there's a lyric line and there's a, and oh, there's an introduction there, and it starts to mesh. I don't think it's ever like, I don't lay it out like I'm going to collect 50 pieces of paper and then I'm going to write a song. It's just, those bits of paper become something. And then that's no get in the song, by the way. Sometimes I'm like, I don't like that bit. I'm going to rewrite that line. Change that key. You know what I mean? But a song comes out of that more often than not, actually.
So, do you see yourself collaborating with a traditional Chinese musician, for instance?
Absolutely. Yeah, I mean, I love that the soundscape.
Yeah, there's the Eastern sound, if I could say that, and that covers everything from the Middle East on to India. Now, there's something. I mean, I'm not a musical person by any means, but I think there's a lot of the songs or the harmonies here are always on the minor keys. I think
those are great keys.
Yeah, so I think that's something that just arrests you when you hear those sounds. So
these are great keys.
And there's a song by I think Wyclef, where Wyclef Jean he plays with that. I think it was. I can't remember, but he says something like he's making the guitar sound like a sitar.
Yeah.
So I can see a fusion of that. Would you be blessing us with such a creation anytime soon? Seeing as you are here, and there's no shortage of artists, instruments that you can incorporate.
Yeah, no, I've actually asked people about that, because it's great sounding instruments that I love to get recorded, like the 2-string I think it is, which is it's fantastic. It does really sound like a violin.
Yeah, it gives it this haunting sound.
Haunting violin.
I think it would have made a nice appearance on your Ghosts. Sounds like something that just summons ghosts.
Yeah. And I'm sorry, I'm terrible with the names of instruments, but it lays out like the big.
Okay, the gujo. I think it's called gujo.
Many
gujo,
strings.
Yeah.
And the people, I have stood there watching people play this.
Yeah, I think it's gujo or gujo. I'm not sure now.
For a long time, more than you would expect people to stand there in the mall watching people play this instrument, and I was like, wow.
Please, please do something. I'd like to. I'd like to hear
it'd be
that,
great.
Because I think you are quite open to experimentation, and your musical personality will be perfect for that. You'll be able to draw on such influences or alternative sounds. And while we're on it,
Yeah, happy to have someone along.
I would also like for you to incorporate some African sounds, Nigerian sounds, Afrobeat, because there's a thing about rhythm. There's a thing about African music and rhythm. The ability, I think it's an uncanny ability to manipulate rhythm in ways that not many other people people tend to see, but they enjoy when it's created. So please, 2 requests from me.
You know how many
African rhythms and Chinese instruments.
You know how many failed Fela Kuti covers I've tried in the house? I'm just like, I'm not going to do this justice. There we go, but you know.
What's your assessment of Fela's sound, now that you mentioned it?
Oh, gosh. I mean...
because I know you're a fan of layering, and when I hear Fela's song, that's what comes to mind. Yeah. There's so many layers, and everything is interwoven beautifully into a sound. So what's your assessment of his, musically speaking?
I'm not a musical critic or historian by any means.
Just
I'm
your
speaking as a
opinion.
layman, as a person who enjoys his music. But I can tell you that is one great example of people taking time to put the layers together. You get the horns, you know. You hold it, right? You don't let it rush. Wait, here comes the other horn. Right? Here comes the horn, right? And then you get the drum going on, the shuffle drum. Just, you know what I'm talking about, right? And you got a shaker and you got a drum. There's two different percussion layers going, right? And then and then when you watch him live, as you know, Fela's not rushing. He's just letting it cook. You know, he's letting it all cook. You know. And the bassman's in there, right? But he's not, and he's prominent, but he's not taking over, right? And you think he's got a guitar player, so the guitar player should be doing this fantastical thing. He's
just a simple.
That's all he really needs to do at this point, because there's so much else going on anyway, right? And then he walks up to the mic and you think, it's been 5 minutes. And he knows it. 6 minutes. He knows it, right? And that's when he starts singing. And that's when the backup singers start. Now, how many layers have we counted so far? 5-6 minutes without singing at all? And you think someone should have sung already. You know, this is a crime in music. It's not 3.5 minutes long. Someone should be singing by now. But Fela knows. He says, you know what? I got this.
So
I got this.
What would you be borrowing from Fela's time?
I just... Let's save that for a future year. Future year right now.
That's a perfect note for us to round off this conversation.
That's a lot.
Because if not, we're going to have a podcast version of Fela's song, long and almost unending. It's been a pleasure chatting with you, Kamau. I've enjoyed every minute of it, and I hope the viewers have. And ask you to join us same time next time.
Hi, my name is Kamau, Beijing-based musician here. And the project housed right here, verse 1, is my album Munkatros. These are not songs of disaster. And I hope after all of this conversation, you will be able to listen, because I think you will enjoy it.